The Persian financial empire, how ancient Persians invented modern economics. You know what the strangest part is? We think we invented everything ourselves. Stock markets, central banks, international trade networks. We act as if all of these appeared in London or New York just a few centuries ago. But the truth is this. About 25 centuries ago, while much of the world was still trying to figure out the basics of agriculture, the Persians were already running what was essentially a multinational corporation disguised as an empire. And I'm not just talking about collecting tribute from conquered cities. I'm talking about standardized currency, fixed tax systems, strategic financial reserves, and infrastructure projects that would impress even modern states. The Achaemenid Persians wrote a playbook that nearly every empire after them copied, often incorrectly. Welcome back. Today we're touching on something that isn't talked about nearly enough, but is extremely important: how ancient Persia built the world's first truly integrated financial system, and why that matters more today than ever. Because trust me, once you see the similarities between Persia and the modern world, you can't unsee them. Let's set the scene. Mid-6th century BCE. A man named Cyrus, the man history would later call the Great, has just accomplished something extraordinary. He defeated the Medes, crushed the Lydians, took Babylon without a fight, and suddenly found himself ruling a massive empire stretching from modern-day Turkey to the borders of India. At the time, he controlled just under half of the world's population. But a success like that raises one big question. How do you actually govern it? Think about it. Every region Cyrus conquered had been operating under its own system for centuries. The Babylonians collected taxes in agricultural produce. The Lydians, who invented metal coinage, used their own monetary system. Egypt relied almost entirely on agricultural taxation. Some regions paid in jewelry, others in livestock, others in textiles. It was complete chaos. Cyrus was a brilliant commander and, for his era, surprisingly not a tyrant. But he wasn't a financial expert. His system held together, but it wasn't scalable. And this is what always happens with empires: growth outpaces the ability to manage it. It's like a startup that goes viral overnight while its back end is still running on spreadsheets and prayers. That's exactly where the Persian Empire found itself. Governors were becoming corrupt, taxes were disappearing along the way, border provinces were doing whatever they wanted, and the center had no clear idea of what was really happening. What the empire needed was this: systems. Structure. The boring things nobody likes, but that make everything work. And that's when Darius I enters the picture. His rise to the throne was somewhat questionable. There may have been a coup, but once in power, he immediately understood the situation. No more conquests were needed. The empire needed to function. His first move was to divide the empire into administrative districts called satrapies. Governors had existed before, but Darius standardized everything. Each satrapy was assigned clear, fixed tax obligations based on population, agricultural output, natural resources, and trade capacity. This was revolutionary. Before, taxation was arbitrary: send whatever you can, or give us what we demand, or face the consequences. Now, if you were a farmer in Persia, congratulations, fixed taxation had just been invented. You were living in the world's first large-scale bureaucratic state. And here's the interesting part: this was actually a good thing. Because predictability creates growth. If you know how much tax you owe, you can plan. You invest in your land. You know the rules won't change on a whim. The Persians understood this. But Darius realized something even more fundamental. You cannot run an empire with dozens of different currencies. Imagine every province today using its own money. Trade would collapse. Economies grow on trust, not confusion. So Darius introduced one of the most important innovations in history, the gold daric. And yes, it might sound like just a coin. But the daric wasn't just money, it was a promise. A guarantee of value accepted throughout the entire empire. The darics were about 95.8% pure gold, an astonishing level for the ancient world, with a standard weight of 8.4 grams. A silver counterpart called the siglos circulated alongside it. Suddenly, a merchant in Egypt could trade with someone in Anatolia using the same currency. Soldiers were paid in money accepted everywhere. Taxes were collected in a single unit. This created a concept modern economists obsess over: liquidity, money that moves freely while maintaining its value. The daric was so trusted that even Greeks who fought Persia used it in trade. When your enemies are using your currency, you've created a reserve currency. The daric was the ancestor of the British pound in the 19th century and the US dollar today. The principle is the same: when everyone trusts your money, you gain influence far beyond military power. But money only matters if it can move. That's where the Royal Road comes in. Stretching roughly 2,700 kilometers from Susa to Sardis, it featured relay stations every 20 to 30 kilometers, with fresh horses and messengers ready to go. The result? Messages could travel across the empire in just 7 to 9 days. That speed wouldn't be matched again until railroads. It was the information highway of the ancient world. What did this enable? Taxes could be tracked almost in real time. Military orders were coordinated. Trade exploded. The road wasn't just physical, it was symbolic. Infrastructure is power. It always has been. Meanwhile, the treasuries in Persepolis and Susa were filling with gold and silver. But these weren't decorative hoards, they were strategic reserves. The Persians understood this clearly: a strong treasury is a weapon. If a rebellion breaks out, you fund the army immediately. If famine strikes, you provide relief. Need infrastructure? The capital is ready. And here's the critical point: this entire system created incentives. Loyal and effective satraps were rewarded. Corrupt ones were punished harshly. Local elites received credit and support. Temple economies were integrated into the state system. The Persians didn't force uniformity, they aligned systems. Think of it like a franchise model. Local flavors, central standards. Money flows upward, stability flows downward. And it worked. It worked so well that later empires copied it. The Greeks mocked Persian decadence but adopted their financial logic. The Romans conquered Persian lands and inherited their tax and treasury systems. For centuries, the daric remained a benchmark of monetary stability. This wasn't influence. It was a template. At its core, Persia was solving the same problems modern states face today. Satrapies became provinces. The daric became reserve currency. The Royal Road became fiber optic cables, trade routes, and data networks. The treasury? Today we call it a sovereign wealth fund. Norway has one. Saudi Arabia has one. China has several. The United States relies on debt. A choice the Persians would have found absurd. The Persian lesson was simple: power lasts through financial discipline, not military force. Empires don't collapse on the battlefield, they collapse in accounting. Rome debased its currency and fell. Spain drowned in silver and mismanagement. The Ottoman Empire collapsed under tax farming and corruption. Britain watched financial dominance shift to the United States. The same risks exist today. Massive deficits. Crumbling infrastructure. Inflation treated as a silent tax and ignored. But some nations are deliberately following the Persian path: reserves, infrastructure, long-term planning. Because the Persians understood this: if you can't finance power, you can't project it. But there's one final truth. The Persians weren't invincible. When leadership stopped respecting the system, everything unraveled. Satraps grew too powerful. Corruption returned. Treasuries were mismanaged. When Alexander arrived, Persia didn't lose to heroism, it lost to neglect. Empires don't collapse because of enemies. They collapse because they forget why their system worked. What does this mean today? Measure. Standardize. Prepare before crisis. Treat financial discipline as power. History doesn't repeat exactly, but if you don't understand it, it will always catch you unprepared. The Persians left a blueprint. The question is, are we smart enough to read it? Thanks for watching. If this changed how you think about money and power, don't forget to subscribe. More is coming.